The chair recognizes the gentleman from Oklahoma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days with which to extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the bill under consideration.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, H.R. 2149, introduced by the gentlelady from Hawaii, Mrs. Hanabusa, would designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 4354 Poa Avenue in Honolulu, Hawaii, as the Cecil L. Heftel Post Office Building. This bill was introduced on June the 13th and was reported from the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform on June the 22nd. Cecil L. Heftel was born September the 30th, 1924. He was an accomplished businessman and a politician who served his community for many years. Mr. Heftel was a well-known figure in Honolulu, Hawaii, and served 5 terms as a member of the House of Representatives. In the 1960s, Mr. Heftel began his career in Hawaii, and when he started the Heftel Broadcasting and took over KGMB television station. In 1976, Mr. Heftel ran for Congress, won 5 consecutive terms, then resigned from Congress in 1986 to run for governor, but he was defeated in the primary. Mr. Heftel returned to the broadcasting business until 2004. He then returned to his community to serve as a member of the Board of Education. Cecil Heftel died February the 4th, 2010 at the age of 85. But his service to the Honolulu community will never be forgotten. I urge my colleagues on the passage of this bill, and with that I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman of Illinois.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I might consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Speaker, it's my pleasure to yield such time as she might consume to the author of this measure, the gentlewoman from Hawaii, Ms. Hanabusa.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the gentleman for yielding. Thank you to the chair as well as the ranking member for affirmatively looking upon H.R. 2149. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the tremendous career of the late Representative Cecil L. Heftel. H.R. 2149 is a bill which designates the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 4354 Pahoa Avenue in Honolulu, Hawaii, in an area also known as Kahala, as the Cecil L. Heftel Post Office Building. Representative Heftel was a very unusual person and a very accomplished man. He was known for his prowess in building radio and television broadcasting systems in Hawaii. Many of us grew up in Hawaii with his creations, like Checkers and Pogo, which was the most popular children's show. J. Akuhed Pupule, one of the most popular radio personalities, and the legends themselves, which still rule our airways in the show of Perry and Price, Michael W. Perry and my good friend, Coach Larry Price. They still are the first and the highest ranking radio shows in Hawaii. Cecil Heftel was elected to the 95th Congress to represent the 1st Congressional District of Hawaii. While in Washington, Representative Heftel's first assignment was to Education and Labor Committee, and ironically, Post Office and Civil Service Committee. Representative Heftel was re-elected 4 times, serving for a total of 5 terms in this body. During the 96th Congress, Representative Heftel was elected to the Ways and Means Committee, where he stayed until his resignation in 1986 to run for governor of our beautiful state of Hawaii. While in office, Representative Heftel sponsored 160 bills, and it is important to note this because these bills evidenced his vision and far-sightedness. He was the champion of tax reform and energy independence, an issue that is very popular today but may not have been as popular back then, always showing aloha for his constituency. In response to President Reagan's tax cut proposals, Representative Heftel said, "I cannot support a tax proposal which would benefit me so much more than those of my constituents who earn less than $30,000 a year." Similar statements are being made today. This is what defined Cecil Heftel, both as a member of Congress and a person from Hawaii. In 1983, Representative Heftel was involved in a car crash near the Lincoln Memorial that left him with severe injuries. The accident occurred before cars were legally required to have airbags. This experience helped shape Representative Heftel's view of government regulation and the private sector. Remember where he came from, a very successful businessman. After the accident, Representative Heftel unsuccessfully filed suit against General Motors, blaming his accident on faulty brakes in his Oldsmobile. It is important to note that after the accident, he received a letter saying there may be something wrong with his brakes. Though Representative Heftel, as a businessman, probably was not in favor of regulations, it is important to note that he proposed these kinds of bills, in the 99th Congress in particular, to provide for criminal penalties for manufacturers who fail to notify owners of motor vehicle safety defects, something that we have all come to expect and are protected by today. This shows you who Representative Heftel was, and the fact that he always placed the public, the people, and his constituents first. He went through his service here in the Congress displaying this kind of independence and courage in looking to these important issues. I want to say that on a personal note, I was able to meet Mr. Heftel in the year 2004. It was at a dinner event where actually I met his daughter Susan first, and when we spoke of her father, she told me, "I think my dad would like to meet you." So we sat at dinner first and had several meetings after that, and he told me about his experiences in Congress. But more importantly than that, he shared with me his passion for education and how he believed that he still had it in him to come and make change in the education system in Hawaii. So in that same year, at the age of 80, Cecil Heftel was successfully elected to the State Board of Education for its Oahu at-large seat, and there he served for 4 years, making his efforts to leave his mark in education like he did as a member of Congress, as well as the greatest communication person we will see in the state of Hawaii. Mr. Speaker, I ask and I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 2149, the naming of the facility at 4354 Pahoa Avenue in honor of the Cecil Heftel. I do this not only to honor him and to pay our respects to someone who served the state so well, but I do this because I want, especially the youth of today, when they go by that post office and they see the name Cecil L. Heftel, to ask, who was Cecil L. Heftel? And I believe that when they learn his story and they see how he served in this body and how over time the experiences shaped his legislation that we may not have thought would be something that he would have supported, and how he put his constituents first, and his genius, his absolute genius in communications, in the creation of all the legends over time, that they will be inspired, and they would one day, among one of them, we may see another Cecil L. Heftel. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would commend the gentlelady for her introduction of this very thoughtful measure, urge its passage, and yield back the balance of our time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Oklahoma.
Mr. Speaker, I urge all members to support the passage of H.R. 2149, and I also yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2149? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.